Is it solitude or loneliness? A question that lingers in the silence of our thoughts, in the spaces between words, in the moments when we find ourselves alone. Some fear solitude as if it were a void, a punishment, a reminder of absence rather than presence. Others embrace it as a sanctuary, a place where the soul can breathe freely, unburdened by the constant need to respond, to explain, to perform. We live in a world that never stops talking. Social media, news, conversations, expectations, all of it demands our attention, pulling us outward, fragmenting our thoughts, scattering our focus. And yet, within all this noise, there are those who find solace in quiet, in the simple act of being. But is this solitude, or is it loneliness? Are we seeking refuge from the world, or are we merely lost within ourselves? In this video, we dive into this question, exploring the thoughts of great philosophers and the depths of the human experience, looking into the abyss of our own minds and asking, do we find peace there, or do we find longing? Before we go any further, consider subscribing to our channel for more philosophical explorations. Let's get started right away. The weight of words. There are those of us who struggle to articulate our feelings. We live in our heads, where thoughts flow like poetry, emotions explain themselves in perfect clarity, but the moment we try to voice them, they evaporate. It's as if the translation from soul to speech is impossible. The words are there, waiting, forming beautifully in our minds, but the moment we open our mouths, they slip away, leaving behind only a hollow frustration. Kafka once said, "Silence is not merely the absence of noise, it's the presence of something deeper." Perhaps silence is not a failure of expression but a different kind of language, one that speaks in the weight of a gaze, in the pause between sentences, in the stillness of simply existing. Perhaps there is more meaning in the quiet, in the things we do not say, in the moments when words fail us and all that remains is feeling. Friedrich Nietzsche believed in stepping away from the collective mind, stating, "I go into solitude so as not to drink out of everybody's cistern." To him, solitude was a means of self-preservation, a way to guard the spirit against the noise of the world. In this quiet space, we confront our truest selves, stripped of external influence. But is this confrontation liberating, or does it feel like isolation? Do we find clarity in being alone, or does it magnify the echoes of our own insecurities, our own fears, our own longing for something, anything, to disrupt the silence? There is a paradox in the way we experience solitude. Sometimes, it feels like freedom, an unshackling from the expectations of others, a chance to exist as we truly are. Other times, it crushes us, reminding us of the emptiness that exists when there is no one to share our world with. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "Man can be himself only so long as he is alone." To be alone is to be untouched by external judgment, to exist without the need for validation. And yet, the absence of others can sometimes feel like a hollow echo, a presence felt in its very absence. Dostoevsky explored loneliness as both a curse and a necessity. His characters, often isolated, wrestled with their own minds. They longed for connection, yet they feared it just as much. Can we exist in this space between longing and contentment? Between craving the presence of others and cherishing the solitude of the self? Are we capable of being alone without being lonely? Or does loneliness always creep in when solitude stretches too long? Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, often reflected on the value of solitude, not as isolation, but as a means to retreat within oneself. He believed that true peace comes not from external quiet but from the ability to cultivate an inner fortress of tranquility, unaffected by the chaos of the world. He advised that one does not need to escape to the mountains or the countryside to find solitude. Instead, one should practice withdrawing into the mind, where clarity and wisdom reside. This inner retreat, according to Aurelius, is always accessible and essential for maintaining virtue, composure, and a sense of purpose amidst life's distractions. The art of seeing. Perhaps the problem is not solitude or loneliness, but the way we perceive them. When we stand in the midst of a crowd and feel unseen, is that not a deeper loneliness than sitting alone beneath the sky? When we watch the world unfold, sunlight through leaves, the ripples in a pond, the way the wind moves through an empty street, is that not an act of presence, an immersion in something greater than ourselves? Schopenhauer, a philosopher who knew solitude well, believed that a man can be himself only when he is alone. But he also warned that too much isolation could lead to despair. There is a fine balance to be found, a space where solitude is not loneliness, but a form of deep engagement with life itself. In these quiet moments, do we feel separate from the world, or do we feel more connected to it than ever before? Living without needing to be seen. The beauty of existence is not always in interaction but in observation. There is a quiet joy in watching life unfold without feeling the need to interfere, to control, to contribute. Some people feel most alive in action, in conversation, in being seen. Others find meaning in simply witnessing, in absorbing the details of the world around them, in existing without expectation. Not everyone craves companionship in the same way. Some people, like Thoreau at Walden Pond, seek solitude not out of sadness but as an affirmation of self-sufficiency. To live alone and still feel whole, is this not a kind of freedom? Or is it a self-imposed exile? When solitude turns into loneliness. But when does solitude shift from a sanctuary to a prison? When does the quiet stop being a refuge and start becoming unbearable? We all have a threshold. Some can spend days, weeks, even years in solitude and never feel lonely. Others can be alone for a single night and feel the weight of the world pressing against their chest. Blaise Pascal once said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." But is it truly a weakness, or is it simply our nature? Humans are wired for connection. Even the most introspective among us long to be understood. The question is, can we find balance? Can we learn to sit with ourselves and be content? So, is it solitude or loneliness? The answer is neither fixed nor universal. It is a shifting tide, changing with our emotions, our experiences, and our understanding of ourselves. To one person, solitude is a deep, meditative peace. To another, it is a slow descent into longing. Perhaps the secret is not in choosing one over the other, but in learning to exist within both. To find joy in our own presence while also embracing the moments of connection. To watch, to feel, to experience, without needing to explain, without needing to be seen. Maybe, just maybe, the most profound way to live is to simply be. This is the Beyond the Surface channel. Like the video, share it with a friend and subscribe for more videos like this one. Thank you for watching.